Hey, Lee here. I was actually driving home from taking my daughter to her day camp and kind of thinking about stuff. Thinking specifically about how to better help you build an offline business. And I was going through in my head, just kind of rolling through the classes that I've done recently, some coaching that I've done, and just all those experiences. And been thinking a lot about what stops people from really building the business that they want. And I want to talk to you about a couple of issues that I know are big issues in virtually everyone that gets started doing this stuff. And these are big stumbling blocks. And I want you to think about this and see if this rings a bell or see if this is something that is preventing you from creating the business you want or hindering your efforts. So let's define what we call a sales cycle. So a sales cycle is the average amount of time from initial contact with a prospect to the point where they say, yeah, I'm in, I'm game, where do I send the money? Do you have any idea how long a sales cycle is in business to business sales? I mean, it varies all over the place. If you're selling an airplane, it's probably a few years. Like if you're selling a fleet of airplanes to Delta, it's probably a few years. But for marketing stuff, the kind of stuff that we do, it's obviously not that long. But it's not 1 week, and it's not 1 day. Let's think about that a little bit. Let's also think about that statistically on average. And I found this to be really true in my own business. You have to follow up with businesses at least 7 times in order to ensure that the sales that you make is the majority of the sales that you would have made from a given pool of prospects. So let me make that really clear to you. Let's say we do some research online. Let's say we're doing something like direct mail letters. We do some research online. We target a bunch of businesses. We send them a direct mail letter as our initial contact, and then we have follow-up. Phone call follow-up. Did you get the letter? Do you have any questions? Handwritten note follow-up. Interesting article from the internet follow-up, what I call an online audit follow-up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You've got several things there that you're doing. And I found in my own business that it's really, really true. 5, 6, 7. When I hit 5, 6, and 7, that's when people, prospects, the people I'm talking to, start to fold and say, yeah, I got it. Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah, let's get this rolling. Yeah, I know you've been talking to me about this. I understand it. I'm ready to get it going. Well, in our kind of business, those 7 follow-ups, those 5 follow-ups, those 6 follow-ups, they're not happening on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's not happening every day. I mean, if you send somebody a direct mail letter, that's first-class mail. In the United States, you got to give 3 days for it to get there. So if you want a phone call follow-up, you would send a direct mail letter on Monday and phone call follow-up the next Monday. Send them a handwritten note after that. It's going to get there, let's say, by Friday. Okay, so that's 2 weeks and 3 follow-ups. See where I'm going with this? I'm tying this back into the sales cycle. 3 follow-ups. So 3 follow-ups in 2 weeks, that means you're looking at least a month for 6 follow-ups. So we really are looking at a sales cycle of a month or 2 in our business. And that feels right to me. You know, when I finally actually, and I've thought about this before, but I was kind of like thinking about how to express it to you in the easiest way as I was driving home from delivering my little girl to her day camp. And that feels right. I mean, it feels right that some businesses I contact call me back and say they're ready to go. That's fairly few of them. A lot of them I have to follow up with, and it feels right that it's going to take a few weeks for me to feel like I've sold as many of those as I'm probably going to sell within reason. Those being from that pool of research that I did, that pool of prospects. I've got the good out of that. So 1 month to 2 months. That's our sales cycle. And again, that feels very, very reasonable to me. So now how does that work into you and what you're doing? Well, there are a bunch of different ways of selling offline. And I have a bunch of different ways of prospecting for business. I tried a lot of them. Most of them work pretty well, frankly. And I would say that on average, most of them take several weeks to come to fruition. And again, you will get some extremely low-hanging fruit early on, but after that, most of them take a few weeks to come to fruition. So here's the deal. If you're trying, let's say method A, let's say you got three methods, A, B, and C. Method A, method B, and method C, and let's say they're different enough from each other so that by switching from A to B, you're basically starting over, okay? You hear my wonderfully well-trained dog? So let's say that you start method A this week, and you run that for 2 weeks. I think most people don't do that. I think most people try it for about a week, in my experience. But let's say you run that for 2 weeks. You're nowhere near the end of our average sales cycle. Nowhere near. You got a good month to go before you're near the end of our average sales cycle. But yet I think what a lot of people do is they after 2 weeks they say, nah, that's hard, that's work, or that's not working, or that's not going to work. They basically come to a false conclusion about the method or the approach or whatever you want to call it. And then they say, well, they go buy another course, another WSO, another coaching, whatever, another class, another thing. And they say, okay, well, I'll try this new thing. And you try it for a couple of weeks. Well, because you're nowhere near the sales, you're nowhere near into the average sales cycle for this kind of stuff. A lot of people would come to an erroneous conclusion that method B doesn't work. And then they go to method C, and that doesn't work. And they go to method D, and that doesn't work. See what I'm describing? I bet you $1 that for a lot of you looking at this video, this sounds really familiar. Another issue going on here is, I call it building your house on a rock, or building your business being metaphorically your house, on a lasting method of getting business. Another way of looking at this, I know for a fact people do this. Some people do it successfully, as successful as it's going to be. A lot of people approach the prospecting thing for business kind of like gambling. There are some times when the stars line up, okay, when you've got the right product at the right time and you just happen to be hitting the right businesses. There's a certain amount of luck involved, there's a certain amount of confidence involved, but remove any of the pieces of this and the whole thing falls apart. But there are people who go around trying to find, I call it the magic bullet, the stars line up, whatever. And there are enough people who can manage to hit it right, to line all this stuff up enough of the time so that everybody else thinks, well, oh, all I need is this thing that's going to work. Okay, now let me give you an example. Mobile websites, still great things to sell. But there was a time, like a year ago, 6 months ago, when they were like totally new. And I could easily see how, now this is not statistically based, this is just gut feeling. I could easily see how it might have been like a year, 6 months or a year ago, a little easier to sell a mobile website than it is now, because a lot of businesses were just coming into the realization, the whole mobile thing and tablets and all that stuff, that they need this, but not a lot of service providers were approaching them. In other words, it was kind of like a window of golden opportunity. Well, that's cool. And the people that were there and that sold that, some of them, a few of them did well. But that's no way to build a business. Okay, that's gambling basically, and gambling works enough of the time so that people who tend to think like that tend to not be long-term, not be consistent thinkers. Think all I've got to do is X, Y, and Z, and I can hit it big again. Well, that's how you lose a lot of money, and that's how you get addicted to gambling, by the way. Some people approach offline marketing like that. They're looking for the formula. Every now and then there's a formula. There's a window of opportunity. It doesn't last long. I've seen it several times. It's impossible to predict. And it's like one of the stupidest ways in the world to build a long-term business. See, I'm personally not in this for just a few months. I'm in this for the rest of my working life. So we're talking about decades. Now, it's going to all change, obviously, because it's the internet. It changes rapidly. That's what's so cool about it. But this whole thing, I'm in this for decades. I hope you are too, because I think that's a good thing. So that would be the only other way to approach making money offline, would be what I kind of call the gambler approach. That's not the way real people build real businesses. That's just the way a few people get lucky, and then other people look at them and say, well, if I had that, if I could create that, but you can't. Okay, in the short term, if you get lucky, I mean, you realize you could take a quarter and flip it 10 times and it would land heads each time. There's a 1 out of, if you flipped a quarter 10 times, statistically 1,024 times of flipping it 10 times, statistically one of those times it's going to land heads 10 times. Now it may not do that, but there's statistically a pretty good chance it's going to do that. But my point is, having to have luck, having to have the stars align, that doesn't cut it. I mean, not for me personally. I want something where I can go to work every day and make stuff happen. That means you have to have rational expectations. And to have rational expectations, you need to be thinking, how long is the real sales cycle? Well, if the real sales cycle is 1 month to 2 months, that means that when you try something, when you try a given method, a method being a service or a product tied to a certain type of approach, including research, including prospecting, including follow-up. When you have all that working, that would be what you would call like a method, or it's essentially a marketing plan is what it is. So let's say you have a given marketing plan. Well, if you're not working that marketing plan consistently day after day after day, or at least Monday through Friday, for let's say at least 2 months, you're totally screwing up. And I think a lot of people do that. So I kind of like in my head, as I was driving home from taking my daughter to her day camp, but I kind of had figured out how I wanted to express this to you so you could understand it. Now, just as a little coda to this, I've been working on some longer term coaching because I think people need that, and I've had a few people contact me about this. It's not going to be for everybody, and I really can't have that many students, attendees, whatever you want to call the recipient of coaching, coachees. I can't have that many because I got too much to do, and if I'm going to do something like this, I got to do it right, and I have to be able to make a massive impact in somebody's business, which, if you've been following me lately, that's the way I run my offline businesses. I'm not interested in selling somebody a QR code. I'm interested in becoming a big part of their business and making a massive impact. So I am coming up with a coaching arrangement, and I'm not ready to announce that yet, but I will be announcing that via webinar in the next week or two, something like that. I need to put some finishing touches on what I would generally think of. It's not really a curriculum because this is not a class, but the general approach. This would be something that would be very individually targeted. Okay, so I have a coach for a part of my business, and I actually have another coach for other aspects of my life, but I have a coach for part of my business, and my interaction with my coach is basically looking at what Lee needs in Lee's business on a very, very specific way. Okay. So it's kind of like if you're familiar with corporate structure, you have a board of directors. Well, my coach is my board of directors. Okay. But anyway, I'm coming up with that. And if you so you might want to think, well, that's something that you might want to consider. Again, I'll be announcing how it would work via webinar. And this is going to be unique, very individually targeted. I'm not going to work with everybody who wants me to work with them, not because I don't want to help you, but because I'm going to have to make sure that I can help you first. And this will be available for a very limited number of people because it's, again, it's unique for exactly how I go about this for each individual working with me is going to be completely unique. But the goal here is to actually, over a period of time, this is not a one-off thing, this is a longer period of time. The goal here would be to help you really build a business. So we would be working on a lot of things that I've alluded to in this video. Who you target, how you do research, what your approach is, how you structure the follow-up, how you tweak the follow-up to make it better, how you actually close the sale, all of that stuff, how you fulfill, how you upsell, that whole thing. I want to find a few individuals who want me to help them build that into a real business. So you might want to keep that in mind. Cool beans. You've seen the light flicker over my head. In my office, I have a skylight up there, which is cool, but it does kind of make making a video during the sunny part of the day, just like what you saw there, problematic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for looking at the video. Any thoughts, just pop it in the comments down below. I'll be happy to answer those or email me or whatever. And have a wonderful day.